Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, you guys had a great, relaxing weekend. You guys got a little break from work for the week. But yeah, it's Monday, so we're back at it again. But before we start today, I do want to make a few announcements. And this is, remember, I was telling you guys about the Spirit Week. So here's the calendar for the Spirit Week. If you guys send me a picture of you dressing up in these themes and just attach it to one of your homeworks, I'll give you some extra points. So you can earn a total of extra 5 points this week if you participate. And possibly if you do every single day, maybe I'll give you a homework pass. So this is the calendar for the week. So for today, it will be pajama day. Tomorrow will be Christmas in March, so wear some Christmas clothes, wear a Santa hat, do something, do your work in Christmas clothes. Wednesday will be We Love Pets Day, so maybe when we have our Zoom session, you can bring your pet, your dog, your hamsters, your birds, your cats, anything you have, you can bring it and show us through Zoom. On Friday is Teamwork Day, so wear your favorite team shirt or your jersey. And then Friday is Family Selfie Day, so snap a photo with your family. You can upload it to me. And like I said, if you do it for all 5 days, I'll give you maybe a homework pass for next week. And then also try to tag your pictures through our social media at St. Trivius LA. Okay? So for today in the morning, since it is Monday, I think we should just start off. We haven't done it in a few weeks because we haven't been together. But we're just gonna go ahead and meditate or take a deep breath for a minute, 60 seconds today. So we'll do our 60 seconds right now. And then after, we'll just get into the lesson. So for Monday, we'll just take it easy. So here we go with the 60 seconds. All right, so remember at this time, make sure you're comfortable. You can either lay down, take a seat, just relax yourself. And remember, rotate your neck if anything. But we'll start the 60 seconds, and the 60 seconds starts now. And that's time. Open your eyes. Hope you feel better. All right, so the last time we met, we talked about the Peloponnesian Wars, and it was pretty much Athens, how they created this thing called the Delian League, versus the Spartans, who they created the Peloponnesian League. And remember, the Delian League with the Athens, they were kind of creating this alliance to work together to defend themselves. But Athens, being the one in charge, they started to charge people for protection, and they kind of use this money, not for protection anymore, but to kind of build an empire and beautify Athens. The Spartans did not like this because they thought they were building an empire, and they created their Peloponnesian League, and they wanted to go and attack the Athenians and the Delian League. At first, the battles went back and forth, but in the end, the Spartans actually won this war, and they became the leaders in Greece. But unfortunately, after this happened, they started to get enemies, and their allies started to rebel against against the Spartans, which weakened all of Greece really bad, which led to another group of people coming in to conquer them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Macedonians and how they came into Greece and they kind of took over Greece. So let's get into the review first. All right, so number one, what happened after the Peloponnesian War? What happened after the Peloponnesian War is Sparta became the most powerful city-state in Greece, and they kind of ruled all of Greece. But then we know that some of these people that were in Greece, they started to resent the Spartan rule, and they started to rebel. Number two, why did many city-states form an alliance against Athens? Remember, a lot of these city-states, they formed alliances against Athens because they didn't like how Athens was treating everybody else. They treated everybody like subjects, like if they owed something to Athens, and they were pretty much taking advantage of them, and Athens was really trying to build an empire. Explain the cause and the effects of the Peloponnesian War. So one of the causes of the Peloponnesian War was how Athens was treating everybody else. They were treating everybody else like they were lower than them and that they weren't as good as Athens. The effect of the Peloponnesian War was Athens kind of got destroyed and Sparta came to power and they kind of ruled all of Greece. So those are like the cause and the effects of the Peloponnesian War. So let's go ahead and get into today's lesson. So the new section we're going to talk about is going to be mostly on this guy named Alexander the Great. He was this ruler from Macedonia and how he was able to build this huge empire that pretty much united Europe, Asia, and Egypt. But at the same time, he was in love with the Greek culture. So even though he conquered Greece, he still wanted to make sure that their Greek culture lived on. So the world's most powerful army in 300 BC was from Macedonia, a kingdom just north of Greece. The Greeks had long dismissed the Macedonians as unimportant. They thought of the Macedonians as barbarians because they lived in small villages and spoke a strange form of Greek language. But the Greeks underestimated the Macedonians, barbarians or not. So today we're going to talk about how Macedonia actually conquered Greece. So if you look at the map, Macedonia is highlighted. It's just a small little country right above Greece. And just like in the building background, they didn't really think of them as a threat or anything like that. They just saw them as just a regular old country and didn't really think because they're barbarians, they're different than them. So they thought just because they're different and they're kind of living in small villages, they weren't going to be powerful. But they underestimated them, and this is where they got into trouble. Just like when you're playing sports, you don't want to underestimate your opponent because you never know what could happen. Any given day, something can happen. One thing about the Macedonians is that even though they were small and barbaric, they did look up to the Greeks and they kind of mimicked what they did, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so in 359 BC, Philip II, he became the king of Macedonia, and pretty much throughout this first beginning of his rule, he spent the first year fighting off invaders who wanted to take over his kingdom, and pretty much he was just fighting off and protecting his land. As soon as they were able to defeat all their invaders, which made them powerful and gave him confidence, he was ready to launch an invasion of his own. Philip's main target was Greece. He's decided, let's go ahead and attack Greece because they seem powerful. After we have all this confidence, we can go ahead and take them down. So the leaders of Athens, knowing that they were the target of Philip's powerful army, called for all the Greeks to join together. But like we said, how they underestimated them, not a lot of the Greeks decided to fight and come in and help defend Greece, which was kind of a mistake. So since not a lot of people went to go fight, the armies of Athens and their ally of Thebes, they were easily defeated by the Macedonians. Because no one showed up, everyone thought they were nobody, the Macedonians wiped them all out really easily. So having witnessed this defeat, the rest of the Greeks agreed to make Philip their leader. So when they saw this, they saw, oh man, these Macedonians are really powerful, they're really strong, they have a really good leader, and since we're in chaos right now because everyone's fighting in Greece, let's go ahead and we'll just call King Philip our new leader. So they made a new leader of Greece, and he was from Macedonia, and his name was Philip. So if you look at the picture on the right, that's what we call a phalanx. And we'll talk about that in a second. That was like their army formation. Those long sticks, those are actually spears. And I'll tell you how they work in a second. So when Philip defeated the Greeks, he defeated them because he was a brilliant military leader. Like I told you before, he borrowed a lot of the strategies from the Greeks, but he also improved them and made them his own. So for example, they used this thing called a phalanx, which you see right there. And a phalanx was a group of warriors who stood very close together in a square. And what they did is each soldier had a spear pointed outward to fight off their enemies. As the soldiers in the front lines were killed off, the other ones stepped behind to fill their spots. And their swords or their spears were extremely long. Like the people's spears in the back row can reach all the way to the front to kill other people. So they're like stabbing them as they walked. So Philip improved on these Greeks' ideas, and he gave his soldiers these spears that were much longer, so they allowed them to attack first when they're in battle. Another thing that Philip did was he also used the cavalry. If you remember what the cavalry was, it was just this group of people that rushed in and tried to take out as many people as you possibly could, and then the flanks would come in and attack. Back then, when the Greeks did it, they sent in the cavalry, and then the immortals came. So he also used cavalry, and he also used archers into battle. So he would use these long-distance archery, shooting them, trying to get them all knocked down, and then have this flanks come in and march in and kill all the rest. So after conquering Greece, Philip decided to turn his attention to the kingdom of Persia. And since Greece was not an easy battle, he wanted to go to Persia because Persia was building this empire of his own. When he was planning to march over to there, he never really made it to the Persian Empire, though. That was one thing. He was actually murdered in 336, celebrating his daughter's wedding. So his daughter got married, and he actually got killed at the wedding, which was a horrible idea, or a horrible story, because they were attacking him at any given day. So once he was murdered, it was like a blessing in disguise, because when he was murdered, his throne was then passed on to his son, Alexander, who becomes Alexander the Great. And one thing about Alexander was he was also a great leader. And typically when leaders die, they go into some chaos. But since Alexander wanted to follow his dad's footsteps and make him proud, he stuck to his plan, and he pretty much continued the legacy of his dad, and he was able to march in. But yeah, so Philip was the first king, developed his military, took down the Greeks, and then wanted to go down to Persia to take over them, but he was killed before he even made it there. So as a quick review, the Macedonians, the reason why they were able to conquer Greece is because the Greeks underestimated the Macedonians. They really didn't give them any credit because they thought they were barbarians. Macedonia was gaining confidence, though, because they were fighting off all their invaders when Philip took the throne. And he was fighting off all these invaders, and finally when they were done getting invaded, he decided, we're going to go ahead and fight the Greeks. Like I said before, the Greeks underestimated them, and when they had a battle, they called for all the city-states to come and help defend Greece, but none of them really showed up. It was horrible. So as a result, the city of Athens was defeated really easy by the Macedonians. The Macedonians, they had a really strong leader named Philip, and he had the strategies that the Greeks used. And one of the strategies he used was this group of warriors called the flanks. And the flanks stood closely together, and they had these really long spears, and they're pointed at each other, and they're able to kill their enemies because of these super long spears. Some of these spears were up to 16 feet long, and they used them perfectly in their battle. After the Macedonians were able to take over Greece, unfortunately Philip wanted to go take over Persia, but when he decided to go to Persia, he never even made it there. He actually got murdered at his daughter's wedding, which is a horrible story, which leads to his son Alexander taking over, and Alexander is going to become even a better ruler than he was. So that was kind of like a quick review of what we talked about today. So for homework, I want you to go ahead and answer these questions. Number one, describe in your own words the term flanks. What was this thing? What was this army tactic? Number two, how was Philip II able to conquer Greece? Remember his ideas, remember who he was, remember what the Athenians thought about the Macedonians. And number three, predict what Alexander will do once he becomes the heir to the throne. So once Alexander becomes a king, what do you think he's going to do? Remember I said he wanted to keep his dad's legacy on, so what do you think his next move is going to be as the leader of Macedonia? So today we had a nice little short lesson to start the week off. If you have any questions, go ahead and message me and I'll help you out. And also send me some photos of you guys in your PJs. It's not weird. It's part of the school spirit week. And if you do, you get some points. And if you participate every day, I'll give you a homework pass. So today's PJ day, and tomorrow I'm looking forward to you guys wearing your Christmas outfits in March. So I'll see you guys all tomorrow.